Elder Quentin L. Cook was sustained as a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on October 6, 2007. Called as a general authority in April of 1996, he served in the Second Quorum, the First Quorum, and the Presidency of the 70. Prior to his call to be a general authority of the Church, he has been a managing partner of a law firm and president and CEO of a California healthcare system. He is a native of Logan, Utah, received a bachelor's degree in political science from Utah State University with honors, and a Doctor of Jurisprudence from Stanford University. Utah State University awarded him an honorary Doctor of Law degree. He married Mary Gaddy on November 30th, 1962. They are the parents of 3 children and have 11 grandchildren. And Sister Cook is here with us today. It's a pleasure to have her. Elder Cook, I'll turn the time over to you.
I am grateful for this opportunity to speak at this renowned institution. I thoroughly enjoyed the wonderful remarks that were given by Cardinal Dolan. I feel it especially privileged to be here with Cardinal Dolan and other close friends, Dr. Jacqueline Rivers and also Rabbi Meyer Solovicek. I have been influenced significantly by each one of them. I express my appreciation to Dean Marcus Cole and Professor Stephanie Barclay for extending this invitation to me. I congratulate both of them for the creation of this Religious Liberty Initiative at this leading law school. Those of us who have been deeply involved in religious freedom were saddened last November with the passing of Lord Jonathan Sacks, former Chief Rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the British Commonwealth. I appreciated my friend Rabbi Solovicek's tribute to Lord Sacks in the Wall Street Journal. Much of what Lord Sacks taught resonated in a spiritually powerful way with me and many others. I can remember reading his December 2011 address at the Pontifical Gregorian University. He noted how secular some parts of the world had become. His address was titled, "Has Europe Lost Its Soul?" He stated that one culprit is an aggressive scientific atheism tone deaf to the music of faith. Lord Sacks, a few years later, articulated the concern I have about the diminished role of faith, moral values, and religion in the modern era. He acknowledged the contributions of science, technology, the market, and freedom derived from the democratic institutions, but concluded the result is that the 21st century has left us with a maximum of choice and a minimum of meaning, end quote. I'm deeply concerned that the profound blessings that flow from the religious impulse are often seen as antithetical to what is valued most in our society. Today I will discuss 2 of those blessings that are lost when we are tone deaf to the music of faith. The first is the way religious accountability benefits secular society. The second is the multitude of good works that religion inspires people of faith to perform on behalf of others. Regarding the first, the role of religion in blessing a secular society was set forth succinctly by Alex de Tocqueville, quoted previously in this meeting. In his 1840 classic, Democracy in America, he stated, "The greatest advantage of religion is to inspire principles. There is no religion which does not place the object of man's desires above and beyond the treasure of earth, and which does not naturally raise his soul to regions far above those of the senses. Nor is there any which does not impose on man some sort of duties to his kind, and thus draws him at times from the contemplation of himself," end quote. Accountability to God for our relationships with each other is a powerful force for good and strongly supports democracy. Being accountable sustains and blesses the values that are most important for societal unity. The late Dr. Clayton Christensen, a renowned Harvard business professor and a dear friend, and member of my faith who passed away last year, was known as a valiant supporter of religious freedom. He stated, "Democracy works because most people, most of the time, voluntarily choose to follow the law. Americans followed these rules because they came to believe they weren't just accountable to society, they were accountable to God." Clay raised the question posed to him by a friend: if we lack religion, what institution will we have to teach the next generation to voluntarily follow the laws? The fruit of accountability to God based on religious freedom are self-evident to those who take time to openly mindedly review the matter. The second related fruit that is lost when we are tone deaf to the music of religious liberty is the multitude of good works that people of faith are inspired to perform on behalf of others. There are far too many contributions faith groups make to society to address them all. I could spend the whole afternoon covering the incredible humanitarian efforts emanating from the faiths of those on this panel. I will provide an electronic summary titled Catholic and Latter-day Saint Humanitarian Partnerships at the conclusion of this panel discussion. I will leave it to others to amplify the significance of the commitment to humanitarian projects provided by various religions. One particularly good work I would like to emphasize today is the central role of religions in helping to bless people of all races. I think that Cardinal Dolan covered this in a beautiful way. When you think about the powerful leaders of the abolition and civil rights movements throughout the world, my personal hero is a British, William Wilberforce. Wilberforce was a major part of a group of devoutly religious Christians who considered themselves ambassadors for God. Above all, this group felt an overpowering sense of accountability and a responsibility to God for their actions. William Wilberforce will forever be remembered for being the principal impetus for the abolition of slavery in Great Britain. Indeed, no one accomplished more to abolish slavery. He proposed bill after bill in Parliament and spent his life to put a stop to the most execrable and human traffic that ever disgraced the Christian world. After nearly 50 years of promoting measures that would one day lead to the emancipation of slaves, the goal was accomplished in Great Britain the week before he died, July 29, 1833. Colonial abolitionists, similarly in early American colonies, were the community for whom the practice of religion had been a principal reason for their settlement, were the driving force against the institution of slavery. The Society of Friends, Quakers, particularly in Pennsylvania, stand out in this effort. But many religious groups supported abolitionism or condemned the slave trade or slavery. Martin Luther King Jr., finally, regarding the civil rights movement and his significance in it, when I was a law student at Stanford University, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a hero to my classmates and to me. The civil rights movement he led was animated by the religious convictions. In recent years, I've enjoyed getting to know his son, Martin Luther King III. I was also pleased when I and fellow apostle M. Russell Ballard were invited by Cardinal Francis George to be with a relatively small group to meet Pope Benedict in New York in April of 2008. And I was seated next to Dr. King's daughter, Bernice. I recently read some of Dr. King's sermons before 1960 and before the civil rights finally became civil law. Much of the power of his message was because of the righteous music of faith that was felt. In efforts to continue this important work, I'm encouraged that an alliance for education and humanitarian initiatives between the NAACP and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is based on the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Upholding constitutional principles. Some argue that upholding constitutional principles like religious freedom is adverse to protecting rights of minority groups in society. That is a false dichotomy. The doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints asserts that divinely inspired principles are contained in the United States Constitution and associated documents. At the Church's last General Conference in April of this year, President Dallin H. Oaks, whose lifelong interest in the Constitution commenced with his experience as law clerk to Chief Justice Earl Warren, gave a seminal address on the U.S. Constitution titled, "Defending Our Divinely Inspired Constitution." His talk included this statement: "Our belief in divine inspirations gives Latter-day Saints a unique responsibility to uphold and defend the United States Constitution and principles of constitutionalism wherever we live. We should trust in the Lord and be positive about this nation's future," end quote. President Oaks acknowledged that inspired principles, when exercised by imperfect mortals, have not always been achieved. A classic example is the beautiful principle that all men are created equal. Abraham Lincoln's assertion on the importance of this aspiration are instructive. The authors of the phrase, "all men are created equal," did not mean to assert the obvious untruth that all were then actually enjoying that equality, nor yet that they were about to confer it immediately upon them. In fact, they had no power to confer such a boon. They meant simply to declare the right so that the enforcement of it might follow as fast as circumstances should permit. They meant to set up a standard maxim for free society which should be familiar to all and revered by all, constantly looked to, constantly labored for, and even though never perfectly attained, constantly approximated, and thereby constantly spreading and deepening its influence and augmenting the happiness and value of life to all people of all colors everywhere, end quote. Let me be clear, supporting the U.S. Constitution and advocating for strong, peaceful efforts to overcome racial and social injustice are not opposites. Eliminating racism at all levels needs to be accomplished, and historically, religious conviction has been one of the great forces in accomplishing that goal. So what can be done to prevent society's tone deafness to lose the beautiful music of faith that can bless us all? My plea today is that all religions work together to defend faith and religious freedom in a manner that protects people of diverse faith as well as those of no faith. Catholics, evangelicals, Jews, Muslims, Latter-day Saints, and other faiths must be part of a coalition of faiths that succor, act as a sanctuary, and promulgate religious freedom across the world. We must not only protect our ability to profess our own religion, but also protect the right of each religion to administer its own doctrines and laws. Lord John Acton in 1862 said it this way: "Where ecclesiastical authority is restricted, religious liberty is virtually denied. For religious liberty is not the negative right of being without any particular religion, just as self-government is not anarchy. It is the right of religious communities to the practice of their own duties, the enjoyment of their own constitution, and the protection of the law, which equally secures to all the possession of their own independence," end quote. My own faith and unequivocal support for religious freedom is based on the clear principles established in the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Church supports the religious freedom of all faiths as well as those with no faith. Two basic principles which demonstrate the Latter-day Saint commitment to freedom of religion for all are, first, our 11th article of faith, which declares we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience and allow all men the same privilege. Let them worship how, where, or what they may. The second is a wonderful statement by the prophet Joseph Smith, who in 1844 publicly called for the abolition of slavery. He passionately asserted his commitment to civil and religious liberty when he said, I am bold to declare before heaven that I'm just as ready to die in defending the rights of a Presbyterian, a Baptist, or a good man of any other denomination for the same principles which would trample upon the rights of the Latter-day Saints, would trample on the rights of the Roman Catholics, or of any other denomination who may be unpopular and too weak to defend themselves. It is love of liberty which inspires my soul, civil and religious liberty in the whole of the human race, end quote. Many in this room have been valiant in protecting the religious-inspired conduct of those who feel accountable to God. You have been engaged in the fighting in the trenches that has been going on in the United States for some time. You've tried to overcome the societal malady represented by being tone deaf to the music of faith. The current status of religion freedom is, of course, one of the principal purposes of this summit. According to the biographer William Hague, William Wilberforce's great fear was that religion and morality would go out of the window. Accordingly, Wilberforce never supported reform that was antithetical to religion. Wilberforce stands out as a beacon of light which the passing of 2 centuries has scarcely dimmed. My challenge to you today is that in our various capacities, we will need to tack against the prevailing winds of disbelief and division. You'll know best how to accomplish this and stand as a beacon of belief and unity in a world that often devalues both. It is my personal prayer that we can collectively elevate appreciation of faith in and accountability to God. It is my hope that both by what we teach and by our example, we can help reestablish the profound significance of the music of faith. Thank you.
So our first question is, Pew has documented a decline in religiosity in America for most faith traditions. Do you think the decline in religiosity impacts both cultural and legal protections for religious liberty, and how does this affect the vitality of your faith community?
I think if you look at a lot of the research on the decline, there still is a very large percentage of people in this country that have strong religious inclinations. I think in terms, if you look at the whole world, still a leader very much in that regard. I think as I was listening to my friend Rabbi Soloveitchik and kind of teasing us a little bit about the Jews having discrimination and that there's more now, I couldn't help but think that it's interesting that you have this panel. If you look at the Ku Klux Klan and you go in the 1920s when there were about 5 million, the main targets were blacks, Jews, Catholics. That was the main target of that effort. We were small enough out in the West, I think we would have been a target, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, if we would have been closer. We weren't back there because we had been anti-slavery in the 1830s and had received an order from the government that would essentially we had to leave or else, and so we left and went west. I feel like that it makes you more sensitive a bit when you've experienced discrimination. And there's no discrimination like slavery. There's no discrimination like what has happened to the Jews' history. There's no analog. So in making that, I'm not indicating that there's that. But I think people who've had that in their life are probably more sensitive and wanting to protect everybody and trying to help everybody to have a better life and to be free from discrimination and to have more kindness and more civility. And so I feel like religion is about kindness and civility at its core. And I think that, so as from a religious sense, I think that we have a lot to offer in terms of trying to accomplish that.
Last closing question, if panelists just want to offer a few statements about this, is are there religious liberty threats on the horizon for your faith community? And in what ways can faith leaders more effectively cooperate to strengthen religious liberty and advocate for each other? Elder Cook, we'll start with you.
Well, I think having this seminar is a wonderful way, and I would like to commend Notre Dame in particular for taking this step. And I think that is the kind of thing that is important, is to have people like this together and to think about it and to talk about it. And I think we just really commend you for doing this. When you think we have religious liberty one at Stanford, my law school, and we've got one at Harvard now, and to start to think about having law students being involved, not always on the toughest issues. Sometimes they're involved with issues that are very specific, but I think it's wonderful. I can see Jim Sawney here. He's at Stanford and has the Liberty Clinic there, and you get about 90 law students that try and sign up for 17 slots. Am I close, Jim, on that? And so we're seeing that kind of effort. I think that the trying to help, and I think there was a little bit of a plea of more support for black congregations and black colleges. I think that that's something that we could certainly try and accomplish. I think that when we do emphasize civility and we strive to have an accountability to God approach where we really do help our neighbors, and we're always trying to think of it that way, and don't try and get entirely in the culture wars and in the political diversity that exists in a way that probably undermines. I thought that Cardinal Dolan's talk was just perfect on that. I thought you traced exactly the direction that we've gone from one area where it was respected, where religious freedom was respected, to one where it's seen as more political. I loved what you said about that. So I think we've had a wonderful event here, and I think it's helping to do it. So thank you, and thanks you, Stephanie, for being the head of this religious liberty effort here.
Thank you, Elder Cook.